All right. Welcome in, everybody. It is Biscuits and SEC Live. We are back for another week, another show. This is our 71st show. Thank you so much for tuning in on a February off-season day as we talk about the 2025 season, the grades, and a little bit of news. So I don't know if my internet connection is great, but well, that's good. So we're starting off the show hot. Anyway, I was just introing the show, so we'll get right to it. Boss man, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Looking forward to talking 2025 season grades, part 2. We got to fix our background here, but we will get to that. And upcoming college football playoff schedule got released this morning, and it sucks. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get into our part 2 of the grades. So looking forward to it. Going to be a fun show. This grading has been a good time. Getting to grade your previews from the preseason, and you getting to grade mine, and just kind of doing a little recap of the 2025 season. So I'm looking forward to getting into that again tonight, and we'll finish it up and wrap up the 2025 season on episode 71 of Biscuits and SEC Live. So it'll be a good time. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, am I back now? It's
you're back.
All right. Well, cool. Yeah. So thanks for that. Sign up for the newsletter. How about that? This is a great start to the show, but sign up for the newsletter if you haven't. The newsletter, unlike my connection right now, is usually good, and it comes out every Wednesday. So we appreciate those of you that we sent it out earlier today. So you get your double scoop of Biscuits and SEC on Wednesdays with the newsletter and the show. So we would appreciate the support there. Of course, follow us on social media, subscribe on YouTube. You know the drill. It all helps us. And if you like what we're doing, we would love the support. So I thought we would get into the new college football schedule real quick and then just hop into the grades and kind of go the rest of the show with that. Brought it up, Dellinger, who, among others, sent out this tweet with the schedule for the college football playoff games next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I included some of this in the newsletter, of course, today. But essentially, the championship game was played January 19th this year. And it's basically going to be a week later in 26 and 27 because they're backing it up further, with the biggest change coming in the between the quarters and the semis. So we're going to do the quarters again on New Year's Eve. Well, it's the 30th because they don't want to fight the NFL over New Year's Eve, which is a Thursday night. So it'll be Wednesday night, the 30th, and then Friday, New Year's Day. And then we're going to go another, week and a half, 10 days before the title. So it's a mess.
It's a mess, just like your connection. So we're going to have to call the internet company, get that fixed up. But you're back now again. So yes, it's the calendar's a mess. We've been talking about this all season, just about. I mean, from the transfer portal when it opens, that's a mess. We thought we got that fixed, but then there's still complaints about that when teams are still in the college football playoff, with having to coaches having to deal with, okay, well, we're in the semifinals and now we're having to deal with the transfer portal to get ready for next season and all that. And the calendar has been the Lane Kiffin drama. Oh, the calendar is the problem. All this. And then at the end of the season, January 19th, right? The national title game is played on January 19th. It seems like it's, just dragging on forever. Let's play this game. Let's have the national title. We lose a little bit of momentum. And then Now we're getting the new schedule out for the bowl season for the next 2 years, and we have the quarterfinals, as you mentioned. So December 30th, 2026. We do get the Rose Bowl on January 1st, which is nice, but it doesn't mean it means it can't be a semifinal. But then we have 38 days between the start of the first round and then the national championship game, which is going to be, I forget what did you say it was? It was like January 20 something. I don't have it in front of me here, but yeah, it's just ridiculous how long this is taking. 38 days from the start of the first round to the national title game. It's just completely absurd, which means that then the transfer portal cycle, because of when this ends, will bleed basically into February, because you're going to, kids that enter late, and so you'll still have kids coming to schools, as we're seeing to some degree now, though that's at a trickle now. But you're going to have a transfer portal window that basically goes into February, and the whole thing is ridiculous. It just goes back to what a lot of people have talked about. Josh Pate, tons of media types, right? Commissioner of college football, all that stuff about how the people in charge of this sport don't seem to care about the fans. It's all about the almighty dollar. The fans at every single turn are getting left behind, and this is just another. There's a lot bigger things that are impacting the sport right now, but this is a microcosm of the issue, right? In that the people in charge of the sport don't really seem to care about what they're doing to the sport, or maybe even care about the sport at all, right? It's just all about, how much money can we make off it? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. It's a little choppy. If I go out again, I'm going to get a different laptop because this is ridiculous. But yeah, I would agree. As you mentioned, 38 days is stupid. And it's funny because, I don't really want college football to turn into the NFL, but in so many ways it is at the
All right, Hammer's got to go get another laptop.
amazing the postseason, right? Yeah, I'm getting off here.
Okay, I will continue this, and then Hammer will be back once he gets another laptop. So, all right. Yes. Anyway, that we don't need to spend too much time on this, but it is frustrating just with where we're at in college football. I mean, Hammer and I, we were talking about this last week on SEC After Dark, just about how, there are so many issues in college football. And look, we are diehards. Like college football, you're probably not going to lose us. It would take a lot. However, we're getting very close to losing a lot of people. And I know the ratings don't say that. The ratings say, oh, it's never been better. They're going through the roof, right? Like, I think that's why we're seeing some of these decisions being made, is because ESPN and, the powers that be, the conferences, conference commissioners, school presidents, et cetera, are seeing the returns on this in terms of the numbers on TV, and thinking that, oh, we must be doing something right. We got to continue to do this. But I don't think that's the case. I think that we're actually getting to a point where, kind of a point of no return, where we've been doing this and we could peter out and start doing that if things don't change. I mean, for instance, look at the NBA, right? Look at the NBA and what they have done, and some of the different ways that they things that have happened to the sport. Look, I was an NBA fan when I was a kid. I don't watch the NBA at all anymore. And their numbers and their viewership and all of that stuff in the United States has really started to peter out, and they've had to start trying to do different things, like the NBA Cup, right? The midseason thing where you've got the midseason thing where you've got like a new champion in the midseason. It's ridiculous. Hold on, I got to hammer this code here, trying to get them in, but. Yeah, we're not. the NBA has had to try all these different things to try to increase viewership again and increase market share and all these things. College football is continuing to increase its market share right now. But if we continue down this path of the calendar's crazy, makes no sense, kids could transfer ad nauseum at will. Pro players can come back and play in college. Just, they've signed pro contracts. We have rules in place, but nobody can follow the rules. Everybody's getting sued. Just this constant, turnover and churn of things that are completely different than the college football and the college athletics that people fell in love with to begin with, which includes us. So I'm a little worried about that as to okay, he made it back. There he is. Switch us back out there. I was kind of putting a bow on this to say that the viewership has continued to increase, right, in college football. We've seen the numbers, which is why I think that we're seeing some of these decisions being made by execs and the top folks in the industry in college football, because they're saying, hey, number go up, let's just keep doing what we're doing. All these fans who are yelling and all these media types who are yelling about this doesn't seem to matter. But I think that there will be at some point, if we continue down this path, a point of no return to where we see what has happened with the NBA, where the NBA has kind of their numbers and their viewership has really tabled, if not started to go down a little bit, especially in the United States. And so they've had to look for alternatives, right? Like we got to start going to international markets. We have to we got to do this new thing called the NBA Cup. We got to try all these new things to try to increase our viewership in the United States. And with college football, if we keep going down this path, I think that's probably where we are going. And we will start to see a decrease in viewership versus an increase.
Yeah. I mean, college basketball is another good example, right? Nobody watches college basketball for the most part, at least in terms of any large viewership outside of the tournament. And that didn't used to be the case. I mean, there's a lot of different things that go into it. I'm not saying, it's just because whatever, but like the product is bad or whatever. But, Duke, North Carolina used to be a big deal. Nobody thinks of it anymore. Kentucky, Louisville used to be a big deal. It's just, it's very regional now. And college sports has always been that way to some extent. College football has broken that mold and broken contain. And personally, I think the only thing that is, keeping college football on the upward trajectory is that it's football. And that's what people love, right? The way that it's run is very poor. And the fan experience is very poor. And they continue making decisions that are very poor for that. And I'm with you. At some point, it's going to either plateau or you're going to start losing people. So interested to see where it goes. I don't like it, but at the same time, I'll be watching. And also, they're probably going to change the format of the playoff. If it's not before 27, then it's after 27. So maybe we'll get something updated then. But I don't like it. I don't like there's just no need for that long to go by for anybody, the players, the coaches, the fans. Like, we don't need this long of a postseason. We just don't. So get it done. There's no need to have 14 days, 2 weeks in between the quarters and the semis. And there's no need to then have another 10 days between the title game where you play it on a Monday night for no reason. Play it on Saturday night. I don't care. Just play it on Saturday night. So
I am sick of the Monday thing too.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's just stupid. And maybe that means the NFL needs to cooperate. I know some people bring that up and talk about it. And I don't know that the NFL would ever bend the knee, but somebody's got to at least try. I think that's part of the problem. Nobody's even trying. I'm sure if you were to ask Roger Goodell, hey, would you be willing to? He would probably not love the idea, but college football is a big draw too. If they played the college football title game on Saturday night up against an NFL game, well, the NFL would do a much worse number than it would without it, as the college football would. So maybe there's a compromise to be made in there. And I think the NCAA or college football, whatever you want to consider it, since NCAA's, sort of out of the picture, like, they need to start throwing their weight around and say, we're not doing this. This is bad for us. And, take it or leave it. And I think the NFL would be open to at least working with them in some respects, but I guess we'll see. This is on our rundown. I don't want to spend much time on it, but I'm just going to give an RIP to National Signing Day as we talk about how college football has changed over the years. Today is National Signing Day. It used to be more or less a national holiday. I mean, the drama, the hat, ceremonies, and the flips, the fax machines, the where is this kid? No one can get in contact with him, and he's supposed to commit in 20 minutes at his high school, and his uncle's on the phone with 2 different schools. That's all gone, and this is kind of a nostalgia thing. I get the idea of moving it back to this because the calendar's so messed up. I also get why they moved to the early signing day with so many kids enrolling. It does make sense. So I don't have a perfect answer here, but just rest in peace, National Signing Day, because it basically happened today without much more than a whimper, and it used to be the biggest deal outside of Saturdays in the fall for college football.
Oh, yeah, man. It used to be wall-to-wall coverage. I mean, our friend Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss, he tweeted today that, this used to be a 20-hour day, right? And he used to work for one of the recruiting sites and former Ole Miss staffer, all that. So, he's well-versed in what a National Signing Day used to look like. And, yeah, 20-hour days, just waiting for the fax machine, what's going to come in, who's going to flip. We don't have this guy's papers yet. Oh, no. We don't have this 5-star's papers yet. Is he going to flip? Is he going to flip? Just, constant stuff about that. I would always be tuned in, as an Aggie, tuned in to Texags, right? Have their feed going maybe. Then I'd, switch over and I'd go to 247 or
ESPNU, I think, used to carry it all day. They just had an in-studio show. Yep. They would go to the, for the big recruits, they would have live coverage of the commitments, again, with the hats lined up.
Yep.
And then they would have, Tom Luganbill and co in studio all day long.
Yeah, and you'd go to commit, right? You got this commit, he's going to commit over here. You'd be going to this commitment. Let's tune in live right here to Hoover, Alabama, right, for this commitment. So I definitely miss those days. That was a lot of fun when that was going on. I mean, you still have it kind of to some degree with early signing day a little bit, but it never has reached the fanfare and craziness of National Signing Day. Also, to some degree, I think because of the transfer portal, right? It's I don't think definitely people don't tune in as much, right? I don't know if this kid's going to even make it to campus. I don't even know if this kid's going to be here after a year. And I'm kind of more watching what's going on with my transfer portal class, because I think those guys are probably going to be the ones that I know are going to be here and stay. Maybe they'll be here 1 year, maybe they'll be here 2 years, but also that those guys are the ones that are going to contribute right away in all likelihood, versus some of these kids that, we're getting on early signing day, National Signing Day. And, I don't know if they're going to contribute. And I don't even know if I'll be able to watch them in my team's uniform, right? Because they may hit the transfer portal after year 1, maybe after year 2, if they don't get any playing time. So, yeah, it is nostalgia for sure. I feel like that's a lot of, old school OG college football fans these days. It's we love it. We still love it. Every Saturday in the fall, the passion's still there. It's still has some remnants of what made us fall in love with college football in the first place, but there's a ton that's changing around us, and National Signing Day is one of those, which I'll put it this way. The newsletter this morning, I was putting together the bones of it. You and I work on it together, most days, and in the off season, now we've gotten to that cadence where we're kind of the ones, meshing together what the newsletter looks like for that particular day. Well, this morning, I was putting together the news and notes section about just the kind of quick hitter bullet points of what's happening on National Signing Day, or what's happening, around the country in the SEC and around the NCAA. And I almost forgot to put National Signing Day in the bullets, because I was scrolling Twitter, finding a couple bullets we needed to put in there. And I just happened to scroll across hey, National Signing Day today. I was oh my gosh, it is National Signing Day. How could I forget? But there's not really a lot that happens on it anymore. So, it is pretty forgettable, really.
Yeah, it is. It is. And yeah, in the newsletter, I didn't even put anything or link anything about it. I included a little bullet that today is National Signing Day and just said, does anyone know? Did anyone care? And not really. So yeah, again, is what it is, nostalgia. But it's sad to see it go. I don't know. It's probably never going to come back, even if they do move the actual signing day back and get rid of the early signing period, just because, again, so many of these kids will be in school and, the drama will be less, but fun to look back on what it used to be. Speaking of what used to be, our 2025 grades. So we did, if you missed our show last week, we did half the SEC, and we're doing the other half tonight. So tonight we've got Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Tennessee, A&M, Texas, and Vandy. So we'll be dishing out grades for all those teams, as well as grades for one another based on our preseason predictions. So we will get it started with none other than the Florida Gators. So as a unit here, overall, we gave Florida an F. They went 4-8, fired Billy Napier. I don't know what else to say, really. They had pretty, I don't know, they had very mixed preseason expectations, I think, right? There was a lot of people that bought in and said, hey, they're talented. And then there was a lot of people that said, well, they're talented, but the schedule's tough. And, but Pate had them going to the playoff. So it was very varied on what people thought they were going to be. But I think at the end of the day, if you go 4-8 at Florida and you get your butt fired, that's an F. That's a terrible season for them. Gator fans.
Oh, yeah.
Just look at just look at Gator Twitter until Billy got fired, and you could see how upset those people were. Corey, thanks for checking in. We got the rubric ready. Our friend Corey Burton of Locked On Vandy. Y'all need to check him out. If you're not watching Locked On Vandy, that thing is taking off like a rocket ship. But so we gave Florida an F. I gave you a C- here, which feels a little bit harsh because you only had them going 7-5. But you missed them by 3 games. And just to go back to some of our conversations preseason, you were pretty high on DJ Lagway, and that didn't.
He's the truth.
So there was some extra downgrading for your hype of DJ Lagway, and he of course will now be playing his football at Baylor because things went so poorly.
Yeah. No, I think your grade is actually totally fair. In fact, maybe not even harsh enough considering all of my praise for DJ Lagway. I feel like I do this with all these quarterbacks. I don't know. I'm like the last to give up on some of these people, coaches, players, all that, because I don't know. I've seen. I just feel like there's still something there, right? Like they've got the intangibles, like, for instance, like Jackson Arnold, right? I wasn't ready to give up on Jackson Arnold yet for Auburn going into the season, and I said as much, right? It's like, look, I'm not sold. I don't know that this is going to work on the Plains, because I'm really not sold on Hugh Freeze. But I think Jackson Arnold, he needed a fresh start, and maybe this, can be a match made in heaven and work out, right? He's got the intangibles. He was a 5-star for a reason, right? Well, I kind of felt that way with DJ Lagway going in preseason. It was like, hey, this kid showed a lot in his first year when he had took over for Graham Mertz. He goes 6 straight wins to end the season for Florida. They beat Ole Miss, like they had some good wins on there. And DJ Lagway looked like he could, be ready to take another step. Like his stats didn't jump off the page in 2024, but it looked like, all right, 2025, like he set the foundation, like let's go up. Let's take that next step. And you're in, second year of Billy Napier's offense. Like it looked like it was setting up. You got, good, solid wide receivers on the outside. You got Jaden Ball. Like there's a lot here, right? And it just didn't go that way. And I think it turns out, right, that Billy Napier just wasn't the right guy for the job. That's why he got fired. That's why they go 4-8. There was times on the sideline where DJ Lagway's like, what are we doing, man? Right? Like the camera's catching him saying that, do you read the lips? So yeah, it was a tough season for Florida. So yeah, based on what I said preseason, I think that your grade was actually spot on, or maybe not harsh enough. I gave you a B because you put them at 6-6. And you were more tempered on them, right? So that's 6-6. I think that's a pretty fair grade there. You did not expect the USF loss. Who did? No one did.
Yeah.
Right. So I think without the USF loss, they're 5-7, which puts you, right where you were thinking they were going to be anyway. So the loss that nobody saw coming, with all that, with you picking them 6-6, I thought B was a fair grade.
Love it. I'll take a B any day of the week. Just ask my old high school and college professors. They'll tell you that's about what I was good for, is a B. So moving on, our next one is Georgia. So sort of the other end of the SEC spectrum, of course, when compared to Florida. So regular season, 11-1, 12-2 overall. Of course, they won the SEC title and made it to the college football playoff for the second year in a row. They got a bye, and then subsequently lost in the first round. So I think we gave them an A- there just because that second straight year where they lose in the second round of the playoffs, but their first game, I think, probably just leaves a sour taste in the mouth of some Georgia fans. I mean, we're nitpicking here, of course. That's a season that everyone would take, and obviously why it's still an A, even by Georgia standards. And I'm sure if you ask Kirby, right, I mean, he would say, yeah, successful season. We won the SEC, made it to the playoff, and you lose a close one to Ole Miss. Like, it happens. But just couldn't give them any higher than that, I felt like, because of the quarterfinal exit for the second year in a row. And I gave you, so again, maybe a little hard. You're grading me a little bit easier, but I gave, or we're right about the same. But I gave you an A here. You had Georgia going 10-2, so slightly off on the record, but you had them winning the SEC title. So you were pretty much dead on with Georgia this year. Obviously, I think we both had them once the playoff bracket was out winning the title, but overall, you were pretty spot on with Georgia on the year. So I gave you an A.
Yeah, I don't think that we picked our national champion preseason. At least putting it up on the screen and such. We mentioned some in passing. I mentioned Georgia in passing. That was my national title pick. I thought Georgia would go on to win the national title, which was a bit of it might sound, of course, pick Georgia, right? Like one of the four juggernauts to pick for a national title: Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, right? A couple of those. But if you go back and remember preseason, there was a lot of folks that were out there kind of like, yeah, we're not sold on this Georgia team. Like, we think Georgia's actually down a peg. We don't think they're very good, in terms of the Georgia standard, right? Like, they're not up there with previous Georgia teams. We're not sold on Gunnar Stockton, et cetera. Again, pat us on the back. We were in on Gunnar Stockton. Both of us were very high on Gunnar Stockton in the preseason when many others were doubting him, and also kind of down on this Georgia team. So neither of us were down on this team, and I think they showed out, right? Like 11-1, 11-1 regular season, 12-2 overall. You win an SEC title and you make the college football playoff. Like, that's where you want to be if you are Georgia every year. So Did this team win a national title? No, but they, in my opinion, lived up to the Georgia standard, which is to be there every single year with the potential to win a national title. And remember, go back to last week, we were talking about this. The way that we're grading these teams, right, is to some degree, okay, one, on how this season went, but on the scale, grading it against what is the fans' expectation and what is the standard for this program, right? So Mississippi State is going to be graded a little bit different than Georgia, right? And Texas A&M is going to be graded a little bit different than Vanderbilt, right, or what have you, right? So for Georgia, that's why we give them an A. I think it was an A-, right?
Yep, A-.
Their standard is being right there on a national championship, and they didn't make it there. They lose in their first game of the playoff, and don't even get to the semifinal or to potentially get to a national title game. So very good season, really good season for Georgia. But to their standard, like, to get an A+, you got to win a national title. To get to an A, you probably got to be at least in the semifinal, maybe in the college football playoff title game. So overall, great season for the Dogs. You and I were on this one when others weren't necessarily on it. I gave you an A here. or excuse me, an A-, because I picked them to win the title, the SEC title. You didn't pick them to win the SEC title. So
Correct.
you were spot on pretty much, one game off in the regular season, and you picked them to make the college football playoff, but did not give them an in on the SEC title game. So had to dock you just a little bit for that. But still, we were both pretty spot on with this one.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, moving on, another team, again, on the other end of the spectrum, but I think that we were both pretty spot on here for. I'll let you, kind of roll in and give the rundown on the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah, what a season for those guys. Pretty bad season if you want to really get into it. 5-7. Mark Stoops is fired despite a $30 million plus buyout. They negotiate him to be out. Will Stein is now in. They had a couple games where you saw some life, you felt like. I mean, you had Texas on the ropes in the big grocery bag in Lexington. You beat the ever-living snot out of Florida, one of those games where you look up on your TV screen watching another game and see the ticker, and you're like, what is happening with Kentucky and Florida? Like, my gosh. But other than that, like, not a whole lot of bright spots on this season. So overall, we gave them a D+. Pretty terrible year. It was compounded by the final just stab right to the chest of losing to your rival Louisville 41-0, when also they have a coach in Jeff Brom who, it seems like is just continually on his way up, doing a great job at Louisville, and had a bunch of offers and potentially, getting out of Louisville at the end of the season. But he's a Louisville grad, decided to stay. So we give him a D+. I think that's pretty generous, I guess, maybe because they got the 5 wins. Cutter Boley plays pretty well in relief of Zach Calzone, now retired Calzada. And that's why you docked me. So I gave you an A- for this because you picked them to go 4-8 on the year. And so you were one game off. And I don't think you thought that Stoops would get fired even for that, but you nailed it pretty much on the prediction, thinking this team was not going to be very good.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. So again, I'll take that. I was one game off, getting an A- is totally fair. You were spot on. Had them going 5-7. Yes, my only, and this is very nitpicky, but my only knock on you was you were very high on Zach Calzada preseason, somewhat as a joke, but also somewhat as like, oh, he might be able to do something. And they were terrible with him. Cutter Boley resurrected their season somewhat, as you mentioned, with wins over Florida and Auburn. And then I think on the D+, you brought up, it's kind of fan expectations, right? Obviously, Mark Stoops gets fired. I didn't expect that, even after the 5-7 season, even at the 4-8, I predicted him. I thought because of the buyout, he would stick around, especially with what's going on with their basketball program, where they just, Cal's gone and they're kind of trying to figure that whole thing out. It's not really working, but they're trying. But 5-7 at Kentucky's pretty normal. I mean, not to be rude, Big Blue Nation, but pre-Mark Stoops, that's a pretty darn normal season. So it's hard to give them an F when they do something that they've done 40 times over their history.
It is, for sure. But Mark Stoops is to some degree a victim of his own expectations, right? I mean,
yeah.
He raised the bar for that program, getting them to multiple 10-win seasons and winning 8 games, multiple times. So the expectations had been raised. And if you paid attention to what Kentucky fans were saying over the course of this year, right, just watching them on social media, listening to some of their podcasts, like things like that, look at, KSR, those types of things, like their apathy had set in, and there was apathy there because this is no longer the expectation, right? Mark Stoops has raised the level. And so the D+, I think for us is right against that level. It's like, this is no longer the fan expectations at 5-7. So yeah, this is a D+. This is a terrible season. You get 3 more wins in Kentucky, we're probably talking about a B. Hey, you got to 8-4. Nobody was expecting this team to be very good this year. If you get to 8 wins, that's Is that a fantastic season at Kentucky anymore? No. They think a 9 or a 10-win season is fantastic. But if you can get them to 8 wins, like that's kind of par for the course. Maybe that's a B- or a B. But a 5-7 season and back-to-back at that is definitely a D+ and not to the level of fan expectation anymore.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. And obviously why he's no longer the head coach there. So Will Stein, you know what the expectations are. He's not shying away from it. He's been pretty vocal in his limited but media availability that he's had. So he knows.
Can I say, I want to say one thing here. I just thought of this. It would be a wild and just amazing turn of events if Mike Elko hired Mark Stoops as an analyst at Texas A&M.
Well,
he should do that.
He should do it. I still think Mark Stoops is a good coach.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Whether he's an analyst, a D coordinator, or a head coach elsewhere, I think he's got some ball left in him. But also, yeah, I mean, it's a perfect fit. Mark Stoops. No one knows the A&M program better than Mark Stoops, so he would fit in.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
And
right.
Given the time that he spent as the head coach there, he would know exactly what he's getting himself into. So I think
he has a deep recruiting network in the Lone Star State after 6 hours as Texas A&M's head coach.
He does. Overnight. He does. The only alternative I could see is maybe if Ryan Day wants to sabotage his program, he could hire Mark Stoops, and Mark Stoops could try to undermine everything he does because of Ross Bjork being the athletic director there. And I'm sure Mark Stoops is not a fan of Ross Bjork, given how that went down.
I don't think so.
Or maybe Michigan ought to hire him so he can do whatever he can to go after Bjork. But anyway, that's maybe an off-season topic of what ifs, where what if Mark Stoops would have been the head coach at A&M for more than 4 hours. But our next one, speaking of preseason expectations, fan expectations, LSU. This is our fourth one tonight and the third one that has had a coach fired. So people were unhappy across the SEC this year. That's I guess a theme. But yeah, LSU goes 7-5. Again, based on fan expectations and preseason expectations, I don't know how we give him anything other than an F. Again, Brian Kelly gets fired as well, sort of the cherry on top there. But 7-5 is never going to be acceptable at LSU, and it's definitely not going to be acceptable with the team they had this year. We've said it a lot. They said it preseason. Brian Kelly didn't shy away from it. He said, national title, we're going to be in the,
receipts.
Yeah, watch out. We're keeping receipts. And I've heard a lot of, LSU folks say that it's going to be depressing looking back at this season in April when the NFL draft rolls around and a lot of guys hear their name called, even guys like Whit Weeks, who would have had his name called but opted to return for another year. They had a lot of talent this year. Did not get it done. It was very dysfunctional. So 7-5, maybe not always going to be an F in Baton Rouge, but probably pretty darn close. But especially with how the season went, the losses they sustained, like the A&M one at home, where they lose. A&M hangs a 50 burger on them and beats them 49 to 25. It was obviously, worse than that thanks to a garbage touchdown by LSU late, but just some really bad losses. And so they get an F. I gave you a C here, which I think is pretty fair. You only had them going 9-3, so you weren't maybe national title or bust on them. I mean, but you did have them going to the playoff, even at the 9-3 clip, which we both had. I think I had A&M going 9-3 and getting in. So we thought 9-3 would get an SEC team in this year. But I think, gave you a C there for being a little bit too high and thinking that they could make the playoff when they fell woefully short of that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, in my defense, this was like one of my picks that was going along with everybody else in the national media.
Everyone.
Literally everybody. Other than that, we'll get to one later where we went against the national media. Both of us did. And we're right. But on this one, for me, I was wrong. You were not as high on them. You were one game off on them. I'll get to that in a second. But, yeah, we were also kind of wrong too. We were wrong on the SEC got 5 teams in, and we had one 9-3 team get left out, and we had one 10-2 team also get left out. So
Right.
it was very it wasn't this scrum in the middle of the conference this year. It was top heavy and bottom, right? It was like we had 11-1 teams to finish the regular season. We had 10-2 teams, and then a drop off, right? Which is typically seen in the Big Ten, not always seen in the SEC, but this year it was definitely top heavy with some teams that were surprising, which a couple we'll get to. But LSU, I talked myself into it. I remember preseason thinking this team, they have it all there, right? And I think, looking at it on paper, you got Garrett Nussmeier coming back. I think it's the year, man. He puts it together, right? He's got a ton of great weapons on the outside. They've got really good wide receivers, right? The defense, Blake Baker, year 2. I have been saying this. They're going to give him a blank check and say, go get whoever you want. Well, that's exactly what happened. He got a bunch of dudes. He got AJ Halsey, Mansour Delane, you name it, right? They really bolstered that defense in the offseason. So it's okay, I think this is the year, right? Brian Kelly typically takes he's going to get it right. So, I talked myself into it, and I overlooked something critical, which is that the offensive line is still terrible. And if Garrett Nussmeier doesn't have time to throw, it doesn't matter if he's good or not. And the offensive line had very little push in the run game again this year, which has plagued LSU. It plagued them the entire time Brian Kelly was the coach. It just didn't come together. So your grade of C for me is spot on. I gave you an A because you picked him to go 8-4. So you were one game off of that 7-5, and you were down on him. I remember preseason, you were just like, all these people, right? Paul Feinbaum and a bunch of these folks. I mean, look, most of the podcasts that everybody listens to here, we listen to those ones too. Almost everybody was like, LSU, man, LSU. They're going to be really, really good. And you were pumping the brakes. You were like, I don't agree. I don't think they're going to do it. I think 8-4 is there. I don't trust Brian Kelly. I don't think he's going to get it done at LSU. And you could have been more right on that one. So I gave you an A, and the final nail was the BTA from Texas A&M that you mentioned that's pushed Brian Kelly out of Death Valley. And that wasn't the only one that LSU fans were pissed about. They were really ticked. Let's go back 2024, we talked about this preseason. Don't forget that Alabama walked in there. Not a great Alabama team, and the Alabama team that made the playoffs, but all Alabama fans thought this team wasn't very good. And that team, led by Jalen Milroe, walked into Death Valley and absolutely curb stomped LSU. Okay, so this was over multiple seasons, and that's why when Texas A&M walked in there and did what they did in the second half for the second year in a row, Brian Kelly no longer the coach. So you were kind of there, and so I give you an A.
Thank you. Yes, I will take my flowers on that one. I think based on preseason expectations, other national media folks, I think the LSU, and then we'll get to it later, but the Texas predictions are the ones that I hang my hat on the most, because I think, whether it's Georgia or Alabama, it's like, we were kind of following suit with those predictions because most thought they would be very good. This LSU pick and then the Texas one later on were the ones, that I felt a little bit like I was going against the grain, and this year paid off for me. So I'll hang my hat on that LSU prediction. Here's one, the next one, the Vols. We were both spot on with this one. So I'll let you dive into Tennessee in 2025.
All right. So overall Biscuits grade for the Tennessee Vols, we gave them a B on the year. They go 8-4. Let's take it all the way back to the preseason here. Preseason going into this one, as we were getting into, the time to talk about this, a month out from the season, what's going on at Tennessee? Nico Iamaleava has left, and it's the story of the college football offseason in terms of personnel. on any team in the country, right? It was a big story for a couple of weeks, kind of a month as it dragged out. And then eventually, right, he ends up at UCLA and you get Joey Aguilar and basically a swap from UCLA. So Josh Heupel dealt a really rough hand going into it, losing your star quarterback, losing the guy who got you to the playoff the previous year, a guy who was he the reason they got to the playoff? Not necessarily. He was, kind of spotty for most of 2024, but expected to take a big jump, has all the intangibles, former 5-star guy, all that, right? So that was kind of the backdrop to this season. Most before Nico Yamalieva does what he did, the whole, mess, most people before that were thinking Tennessee has a shot to really go this year, right? This might be a year they push for a national title. This might be a year at the very least that they can make a run in the college football playoff, right? Then the Nico stuff happens and then everything changes. The whole thing gets changed. So you and I were on that train of pumping the brakes. I really thought it was a season that was a wash. And I thought that if Heupel was able to get them to 8-4, 9-3, that to me, that was an A+ season, right? Not an A+, maybe like an A-. Okay. Like a good season. He kept it on the rails and he got it to the next year, which is now when we're really trying to figure this out. Because we were dealt a bad hand. So that's what happened. They go 8-4. They kind of keep it on the rails. They win the games they're supposed to. They lose some games that they probably had a shot to win, right? Alabama, like, make some bad mistakes, and it doesn't go your way. Bad home loss to Vandy. Getting absolutely rocked by Vandy is not fun.
Yeah.
Tennessee fans do not like that. So that, at this preseason, I remember saying, Josh Heupel needs to keep this thing on the tracks. And I think that Vols fans, for the most part, with everything that's happened, will give Josh Heupel a mulligan, right? Like, all right, whatever. You kept it on the tracks. The sucker didn't go crazy. We're not 5-7. Let's get to 2026. With the Vandy loss like it was and leaving a bad taste in the mouth of Vols fans at the end of 2025, I don't know that he got the full mulligan, but he at least kept it on the tracks. And I think once we get to 2026, it'll be okay. Heupel, let's get it back to where it needs to be. 9-3, 10-2 into the playoffs. So I gave you an A+ on this one because you hit the nail on the head, 8-4, and vice versa. You did the same for me, A+. So we were spot on this one.
Yeah, exactly. We both nailed this preseason. We were both pumping the brakes on just the team. And I think you're right. Like, again, context here. 8-4 at Tennessee ordinarily is not a B grade. That's at best C, probably worse. That's not what those fans expect. It's not what Heupel expects. But given what happened with Nico when he left, I mean, we talked about it ad nauseum last spring and then even entering into fall camp. Aguilar didn't even get there till fall camp, right? Yeah. Because this was post-spring. This was at the second portal window. And we just kept saying he doesn't have time to learn the offense. And his track record is not that great. And he had a decent year, threw for a lot of yards. He wasn't the biggest issue on their team. Their defense ultimately was, but we were pumping the brakes on it. And as you said, I think they deserve a B here because Heupel kept the train on the tracks. They've won the games they were supposed to win. You look at their 4 losses. Georgia, very close game. A couple missed field goals killed them. I mean, they had Georgia. They missed field goals. Georgia takes advantage. They lose. Bama, very close loss. We're right in that game. Come up short. Oklahoma, similarly, it's tough to lose that game at home, but they were close. They were right in it. Oklahoma edges them, in the fourth quarter, and then they lose at home to Vandy. 3 of those games were very close. The Vandy one wasn't, but all 4 of those teams, 3 were in the college football playoff. Vandy was on the doorstep at 10-2. So they beat the teams they were supposed to. They lost to the really good teams on their schedule, 3 of which were kind of coin flip games. So it's hard to look at this and say it's worse than a B to me, just because the hand he was dealt, the way the season played out, you'd like to think Nico wins at least one of those games, and they're sitting at 9-3, maybe two, and they go 10-2. So they were right there in their big games, came up short, but given the circumstances, I think it's understandable. Now he goes 8-4 next year. It's not a B, but
no, definitely.
For now, I think that's fair. And obviously, yeah, we were both, nailed the prediction. So
one other thing to mention on it too, that grade changes significantly, probably from a B to more like a C- if they lose to Arkansas in that shootout.
Yeah, or Mississippi State in overtime.
Right. Like there were some close calls that, they're both ways, right? Like you said, they could have gone to 9-3, could have gone to 10-2. Mississippi State, Arkansas, like there were a couple of games too. Like this was just a kind of a rocky season, right? But at the end of the day, Heupel gets the wins, and there was a couple losses, right, that you want to have. But he, as we were hoping in the preseason for him, and as we expected, as we predicted, Heupel will keep it on the tracks. He's a good coach. And he kept it at least on the tracks, even though, that car was shaking for a lot of the season back and forth.
Yeah. No, exactly. Well, let's get into our alma mater here. So heck of a season for the Aggies, obviously. 11-1, make the college football playoff for the first time ever, and obviously lose the opening round to Miami in a close game. You were on site at Kyle Field for that one. And, hey, this is definitely loser talk to even bring up, but it did feel kind of good seeing that Miami went all the way to the title game and gave everybody a run for their money, including Indiana. Oh. And, A&M was right there. They lose 10-3 and of course, throw the pick in the end zone with 30 seconds left or whatever that was, or maybe time expiring. My memory's bad, as you can imagine, with the end of that game because it was so traumatic. But this is obviously an A. I think you could look at this and you could say A+ because A&M hasn't been in this situation before. But I also think, again, some context that everything's there for A&M, and everybody's been saying that for years, but it's hard to give them an A+ when they don't make it to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So they're not even a factor in the SEC title game. You lose to your rival Texas, and then you are one and done in the playoffs. So I think history would maybe say it's an A+, but some context here of like, can't lose to your rival. Don't even make it to Atlanta. You're one and done in the playoff. Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit and just give them an A. But it's kind of nitpicking there. So, in terms of grades, I gave you a B+ here, and you gave me an A. I think the only real difference, I think we both had A&M going 9-3, so we were a little higher than national media. I think the over/under was set at 7.5 for A&M, so we're a little bit higher. I think the main difference is I thought A&M would get into the playoff at 9-3, and so that kind of bumped me up there. But we were both, I think, tempered in our expectations, but higher on A&M than most coming into the year.
Yeah, for sure. So Athletes Forum podcast, thanks for joining us, guys. Good to see you. Has to be a Marcel Reed season next year. Otherwise, I don't know if they'll repeat last year. 100%. And I bring up that comment here because Marcel Reed was having a great season. I mean, we were talking about him in the Heisman race up until the Texas game. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the wheels fall off the train completely. The Texas game, second half, atrocious, as we all know. And then against Miami, it was like I didn't even know who I was watching. I mean, I'm in the stadium watching this happen live, and I'm like, what am I watching? This is crazy. He doesn't even look like the same quarterback that I watched for 10 games, aside from the first half in South Carolina, right? So I think why they don't get, like you said, right? Okay, you gave them the Biscuits grade overall was an A. Okay, based on fan expectations, based on everything with where Texas A&M fans feel that the school should be, where the program should be. That's a really good season, like you said, based on history, right? Like we just, for goodness sake, sleeping giant. Everybody's been saying, oh, A&M's a sleeping giant. Well, he's been asleep for a long time and he never seems to wake up. Okay, well, this year they woke up. you get to the college football playoff, right? That's what you want. You want to get to the college football playoff. But like you said, not competing for the SEC title because you lose to your rival again. You can't keep losing to your rival. You lose in pretty ugly fashion. I mean, Texas gave you all the chances you could want to go and win that game, and you can't do it. You can't stop the run all of a sudden against Texas. You know, you've been doing it pretty well all season. Well, you can't do it against Texas, right? Miami game, completely fall off a cliff in terms of your offensive production. You've scored 30 points all but one game this season, and against Miami, you score 3. You know, like you can't hit a 24-yard field goal or whatever it was. I mean, the list goes on and on. So that's why it can't be an A+. But we did get him to an A because based on fan expectation, this is a really good season for A&M. And now the expectation level's raised, and you got to beat Texas, and you got to keep going to playoffs, and you got to knock on the door, and you got to win a national title. That's what Aggie fans want. That's what they expect at this point. And Athletes Forum, you mentioned Marcel Reed's season next season, right? I'm with you. Just a quick note on that. The Aggies did pretty well in the portal, getting Isaiah Horton at wide receiver. They've got Mario Craver coming back. Marcel Reed has to take that step, and he's going to have every weapon he wants in order to do that.
Yeah, he will. A big part of that, which is a big unknown, is Holman Wiggins, new offensive coordinator, yes, promoted from within. Colin Klein, of course, at Kansas State now. So we'll see how that meshes. I think Klein did a good job. I mean, hence why he got the job at Kansas State. And I think Reed was a good fit. That, you know, they were a good fit for one another, for what Reed wanted to, or for what Reed is good at and what Klein wanted to do. I think we saw that last year a lot with the back and forth between Wigman and Reed, and ultimately, you know, Reed was the better option. And then this year, for 11 games, it looked great. So, you know, again, hard to bat 1,000, but 11 out of 12 is pretty good, or 11 out of 13 if you include the playoff. So yeah, we'll see. We need a big season from Reed next year for sure, because we got some weapons coming back, but you know the offensive line is losing some production. So
yes,
you know, more on his plate this year ahead than probably was this past year. So anyway, let's go down the road. We brought this up a little bit earlier. I'll let you kind of intro Texas here, but here's our grades across the board for the Longhorns.
Okay, C+ for the Longhorns, the former Big 12 school that had trouble winning Big 12 championships. I'm sorry, I just had to throw in a little homerism, okay, from this Aggie. Putting my bias aside and thinking of this objectively, this for sure is a C+ season for Texas. I mean, this program, you know, especially for fan expectations, if you're talking about fan expectations, is national titles. Period. End of story. At the very, I mean, they were all over Quinn Ewers for, you know, 2 years for not being good enough, and he got them to the playoffs 2 years in a row, right? Yeah. Including in a year when it was a 14 playoff, not 12. So fan expectations are that this is a national title. You know, this is national title or bust, and they didn't even come close to that. And when you weigh that against being number one in the country coming into this season, and we were talking about LSU earlier. Everybody's on the LSU train, right? Everybody was like, really, hammer LSU, hammer LSU. They're either going to be a national title or they're going to make a deep run in the college football playoff. There were tons of pundits talking about Texas. Texas is like Arch is the guy, blah, 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 blah. Heisman favorite. And then we see Ohio State in week 1, and it's like, oh, geez. And then it's the precipitous fall out of the rankings.
They liked your former Big 12.
So that they were the fastest to go from number 1 in the country to unranked in the AP poll era, except for Ole Miss in 1963. But that's a whole different story. There was only 10 teams ranked in the AP poll at that time. Okay, so based on expectations going into the season, based on expectations for Texas, this is not even close to what they expect, and Sark is kind of on the hot seat now, to be honest with you. I don't think that they'll put up with this for too long. I know they're 9-3, right? But look, this is not what Texas pays Sark to do. And by this point in Sark's tenure, they expected to be a lot further ahead than they are. Probably have a national title by this point. Well, they don't. So anyway, Texas 9-3. They were on the cusp of the college football playoff. which is kind of crazy to say considering their season. But they beat Texas A&M at the end, and they were right on the edge. They beat Vanderbilt, which is a great win as well. But to wrap that all up quickly and let you talk a little bit, A+ for me. I gave you an A+ on your grade. You gave me an A+ as well because you and I preseason were pumping the brakes on Texas, and there was two reasons we were pumping the brakes on. One, everybody's blowing smoke up Arch Manning's you know what, and we have hardly seen anything from him at all. We have barely any game tape from this guy. Everybody's already crowning him the Heisman winner. Everybody's already crowning him, saying he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we have no evidence of this. It's practice. We're talking about practice. We have no evidence, and that played out, especially early in the season, through Florida, right? At least. And then the second thing was offensive line. They had to replace a lot on the offensive line, and they had to replace a lot on the defensive line in the trenches, right? And that played out as well. The offensive line had their struggles for most of the year, all the way up until the end, until Texas A&M, where they started to figure it out.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's spot on. I think, 9-3, especially with that schedule, a lot of programs would take that, but of course not with Texas. Not Texas, and not where they were, right? Preseason number one. They fell off pretty precipitously from their preseason expectation. You mentioned falling out of the rankings completely. So, I think a C there, C+ is very fair, even for what a lot would consider to be a good season. And again, you brought up the us both predicting them to go 9-3, and that was really on the back of we're not sure about Arch Manning yet, especially early. I mean, I just I looked at their schedule and I looked at especially Ohio State week 1 and just said, he's not ready. That's a loss. And then from there, are they going to go 10-1 the rest of the way? And that's just easier said than done in the SEC, which they figured out. And so, and they had some close wins as well. Barely squeaks by Kentucky, barely squeaked by Mississippi State in overtime. So good for them for getting it done. Yeah, I mean, they got it done, but this was especially early, a very, shaky season. And they figured it out late, to their credit. You brought up the Vanderbilt win, great win. The A&M win, great win. And at the end of the season, I didn't think they deserved to be in the playoffs, but in terms of, whatever, the best 12 right now, they probably were one of the best 12 teams at that point in time. Their resume, to me, did not stack up. They didn't deserve it. But at that time, I get that argument because they were playing well. So, finished strong. Arch finished strong. I think there's a lot to look forward to next year, but definitely a disappointing season, and feels good to gloat that two Aggies called it and said, no. You guys, y'all are hitting the under on your
That's right. Yeah. Look,
preseason win total. So we'll see what it shakes out next year. I think, of course, expectations are high again. Arch is back, the transfer portal haul. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about the 2026 version of the Longhorns. But
and to say something very quickly nice about the Longhorns, I was not high on Arch Manning going into this season for the reasons we talked about. Not enough experience under center. Not enough bullets flying at him during the game. Going into 26, I'm much higher on Arch Manning. I am worried about Arch Manning. I think that Texas is going to be very dadgum good with him under center.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, we'll close it out. Hopefully our buddy Corey is still on from Locked On Vandy, but this is an A+ season. Vandy goes 10-2. They beat Tennessee handily in Neyland. They beat LSU, who, we gave LSU an F, but at the time, I think LSU was a top 10, top 15 team. That was kind of the beginning of the end for Brian Kelly, losing to Vanderbilt, which is just a sentence you don't anticipate ever saying. Nope. So this is obviously a A+ season for the Commodores. I mean, a historic season. And, they did lose the bowl game to Iowa and unfortunately didn't get, into the playoff. They were left on the outside looking in, which was a shame. But 10-2 with, your losses to Texas and Alabama is a heck of a season in Nashville. no matter how you spin it. So job well done to Clark Lee and the Commodores and Diego football. I gave you an F here because you you had me going 4-8.
Well, F you, man. Okay. No, I totally deserve that.
I think that was probably your worst prediction, honestly, in terms of
bad.
Preseason win-loss versus actual. I think that was the furthest off you were.
Yes.
So,
sorry,
you're a non-believer.
Sorry, Corey. I think I even said that preseason. Sorry, Corey. I think Vandy's going to suck. I think, my thing was just playing the odds. I said in preseason, I was like, I love Clark Lee. I love Diego Pavia. I love what they got going on, but show it to me again. Kind of, okay, you were 6-6 last year. You had the big win over Alabama, number 1 Alabama, right? You get the big win. You have a good season, okay, 6-6, great, lovely. What is playing the odds? If I'm playing the odds, what am I saying? I'm saying Vanderbilt most likely is going to revert back to the mean. And the mean for Vanderbilt football is very bad, right? So, and we also thought, hey, there's tape now out there, right? There's tape on Diego Pavia. There's a lot of tape on the way they like to run this offense. People aren't going to get caught off guard again by Diego Pavia and the way that they do things, right? Like there's a whole offseason to watch all this, right? It didn't matter. It did not matter at all. Diego Pavia just went on a tear and, turns in the best season in Vanderbilt history, goes to New York and parties it up and does his thing, right? Aside from that, right, he's a Heisman finalist, which, again, did I ever think in my lifetime I would be saying Vanderbilt has a Heisman finalist? No. Corey, right here. Corey Burton of Locked On Vandy, his evolution as a passer was phenomenal. It was. He made a couple dime throws, right, in 2024 that kind of like made you perk up a little bit. But 2025, he was throwing it all over the field. And the way that he was able to do that, and then the run game for Vanderbilt, right, was really solid. Vanderbilt was taking people over in the trenches.
Yeah.
Like that was where it really started, was in the trenches, which is what people say all the time. If you watch college football, if you watch the SEC, this game is one of the trenches, right? It's an old cliche. It's an old adage, but it's true. And Vanderbilt was able to do that this year against a lot of teams that you're like, how are they doing this? So it was an awesome season for Vanderbilt. It was impressive. I loved watching this team play. Every chance I got, right, I had this team on the quad box or whatever, and I was paying attention to them because they just had a fun brand of football, and Diego Pavia was fun to watch. I totally deserve the F there for that one. I was poo-pooing them, and I was saying, I don't think they got it this year, and I think they revert back to the mean. But you had them at 6-6, so I gave you a D-, and you were a little higher on them than me. You thought they could repeat their success, quote unquote, of 2024. But overall grade A+, 100%, because based on fan expectation, they far outweighed. The only thing that I'm sad about, I wanted them to be in the playoff so badly. The fact that we got robbed of seeing Vanderbilt in the playoff this year is a travesty. But to Clark Lee's credit, we go back and watch my Notre Dame rant from a couple weeks ago when they denied the Pop-Tart Bowl. But Clark Lee handled it as well as you can. We didn't do enough. We didn't make enough plays, right? We could have gotten that onside kick against Texas. We could have made a couple more stops against them, and we just didn't get it done. So credit to always.
Any mention of the Pop-Tart Bowl, we have to play that.
That's right. We're just going to work that into random shows now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great season for Vandy. So much fun to watch this year. I hope that Vandy is a mainstay going forward with continued solid seasons.
Agreed. And I like you said, I had them going 6-6, so slightly better, but it's not like I was a believer in the Commodores in 2025. So we both whiffed on that one pretty heavy. And then to close it out, we're going to give ourselves full on grades here for the season. And I think so. You put this together for us, so I'll let you kind of give your rationale, and I've got one thing to add.
So I fully averaged this out. Okay. So this is the real grade, right? So every grade that you gave me and every grade that I gave you, I gave us the highest it could be, right? So if it was so technically I think yours, is that correct? Yeah. So the highest a B plus could be is an 87, right? Or I guess it would be an 89. So I messed that up a little bit. It should be an 89. My B should be an 86, I think, but whatever.
Yeah.
Close enough, right? So I averaged it out and took every grade that you gave me and every grade that I gave you and said, okay, what is the overall average to get us to what our grade on the season was for our preseason predictions? And I scored it. And so that's their score right there. I get a B, you get a B plus. I think that's pretty dadgum good. You know what? For preseason predictions, as hard as they are, I think we did all right this year. I'll take a B, as difficult as it is to predict this. And I had some great predictions. I had some terrible ones. That's one of them we just mentioned. Vanderbilt, LSU, probably two of my worst. But there were some good ones in there too. So overall, I will take a B. I think that there's probably some national pundits that are well below us.
100%. And I will add to this. I'm glad you explained the rationale because I think that's totally fair, and I think those are fair grades. I will say, if you're a gambler, the preseason over and unders, and it's kind of bears out in our grades here, B plus to a B. I went 12-4 with SEC team over and unders, and you went 11-5. So we do our picks on SEC After Dark during the season, Thursday nights at 9 Eastern. Those are not as good as our preseason win and loss total. So I'm not going to say you need to be tailing our picks. I'm not even betting on my own picks because I learned that lesson long ago to not do that. So I'm just saying, though, if you are, maybe next August when we come back around to preseason win totals and our record predictions, just keep that in the back of your mind because it's either – means we're really good at this, or it's bound to flip next year and we're going to be going, 5-11 and 4-12 because those are pretty darn good records there to beat Vegas that soundly in preseason win totals. So a little pat on the back there for the Biscuits and SEC boys for crushing the preseason stuff. In season, like I said, don't worry about that stuff, but preseason, we're your guys. If you need gambling advice.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got two segments to close us out here. So we got our Leach Coach of the Week. If you missed it last week, we always do the Muschamp Coach of the Week, but we have switched it up to the Mike Leach Coach of the Week because Will Muschamp is back on the sidelines. And, of course, rest in peace, Mike Leach is not. So we thought it would be a good transition of power there with Muschamp stepping back into the coaching world and Leach just being a character of all characters in college football. So this is an homage to Mike Leach and the passion and the, just silliness that he brought to college football. So we give this award out every week to the coach that best exemplifies that. And pretty slim pickings in the offseason, as you would imagine, but we got a pretty good one. And I honestly felt like it was very similar to a response that Leach would have given if he was posed a similar question. So this one goes out to John Summerall when he was asked about the eligibility stuff going on, NBA players, G League players coming in and play college basketball. So here's the clip from his presser.
Do you think maybe it's a matter of time before that happens in football, where somebody who went pro comes back, and do you have to open yourself up to the possibility of that might happen and maybe create a space for that?
I wasn't planning on sharing this today, but we're going to file a temporary restraining order and see if Tim Tebow can play short yardage and goal line, all right, quarterback. So I don't know what the hell is going on with all that. Like, I don't understand it. I'm not smart to figure it out. I'm not going to make any statements that's going to be bulletin board other than Tebow probably here because I'm not smart enough to understand all this legal stuff. To me, you're either in college or you're pro. Which one are you? I don't know.
You're either college or you're pro. Which one are you?
Well, that's what all of us thought up until this season. So I am completely with Coach Summerall there. And a good quote. Like, I can see he wasn't full Mike Leach. No one will ever compare to Coach Leach. He was one of one. But that was kind of in the vein, in the lane of Coach Leach, just kind of deadpan funny answer, joking around there about the whole mess that we're seeing in college basketball right now. With pros, because look, if I don't know why Miami wouldn't have. Ray Lewis and Michael Irvin were on the sideline for Miami. Like, they have eligibility now. Like, put Ray Lewis back out there. I guarantee you that guy can still plant people.
True. Yeah. And Ed Reed could put his giant hat on and deck somebody coming over the middle.
Yeah.
Well, we got one more segment for y'all, Biscuit of the Week. So again, thank everybody for joining us tonight. We got 125 y'all tuned in. We do this one every week. This is we love biscuits here at Biscuits and SEC, hence the name. We love Southern food, Southern culture. So we want to give a shout out each week to a biscuit. And if you want to be featured, send us an email, biscuitsandSEC, or contact@biscuitsandsec.com, or DM us on any social media platform. We're not hard to get a hold of. So if you want to be featured, let us know. Our old friend, Captain Biscuit, Rick Wilmarth, came through for us this week and sent a submission in. I believe he's on vacation or doing something down in Florida. So Rick, hope it's going well. And he stopped in and got a couple biscuits this week and sent them our way. So he was at Maple Street Biscuit Company in Hamlin, Florida. And you're looking at from the top left, a chicken biscuit, which that chicken patty is enormous. So props to Maple Street for that. Moving to the right, we've got a cinnamon roll, absolutely smothered in icing. Then we have a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit and some smash browns, which look really good. They're like fried to a crisp, which looks awesome. So if you're in the Hamlin, Florida area, give Maple Street Biscuit Company a visit, because this looks, I would get the chicken biscuit just completely based on the size of that filet.
Oh yeah.
Or chicken thigh.
That one reminds me of, it's even bigger though, of Bojangles. Like when you get the Cajun filet, the spicy Cajun filet. I love that little bit of spice in the batter. But yeah, that one looks great. Rick, help me out. What is that on the bottom left? Hammer, did you say it? Is it a sausage, egg, and cheese?
Yeah, sausage, egg, and cheese. Yep.
Oof, gosh, yeah, that whole thing looks absolutely incredible. Maple Street is a chain, and they have one actually not far from me. I think it's out in Dripping Springs, which is kind of near Austin. But yeah, there's a Maple Street Biscuit Company out there. I have wanted to try it for years and have not gotten around to doing it. So Rick, looking at what you sent us in here, man, thank you so much for sending us these pictures. I'm going to have to make a journey out there to Maple Street Biscuit Company here pretty soon. The smash browns with dipping sauce ruled. That's a good way to describe it, Rick. Yeah, that looks incredible. So I am going to have to make my way out finally to Maple Street Biscuit Company out in Dripping Springs, Texas, because I am now salivating. I haven't had dinner yet either, so I could go eat all of that right now.
Yeah, no, you're definitely going to have to. I didn't realize that they were a chain in and around Austin. So You'll definitely have to give them a visit. Well, with that, y'all, again, thanks for tuning in. That will be it for us this week. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. We'll be back tomorrow on SEC After Dark. Lord knows what we'll talk about. I'm sure we'll go off the rails there. And just one more plug before we close. Sign up for the newsletter. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on socials. We appreciate it. We'll be here all off season. And we look forward to having fun every Wednesday night until football returns. So appreciate y'all. Have a good rest of the week.
Thanks, y'all.